you've just closed your notes. An hour ago, you had it all figured out. Everything made sense. You were nodding, reading, and highlighting the key points. But now, nothing. You can't recall a single definition. Sound familiar? The problem isn't that you have a bad memory. The problem is that you weren't actually memorizing anything. You were simply recognizing the words while reading them. And those are two completely different processes. There is a phenomenon known as the forgetting curve. Without review, the brain loses up to 70% of what you thought you had learned within just 24 hours. This isn't because the information was erased, but because it wasn't properly consolidated in the first place. You didn't build connections, you merely skimmed the surface. And this is where the trap lies, one that fools almost everyone. It is called the fluency effect. When a text reads easily, the brain concludes. If it's easy, that means I know it. But ease of reading and actual comprehension are completely unrelated. You can read fluently and remember nothing. That is precisely why passive reading doesn't work. You look at the text and the words pass through your eyes, but they don't stick in your mind, because the brain isn't creating anything. That is precisely why passive reading doesn't work. You look at the text and the words pass through your eyes but don't stick in your mind, because your brain isn't creating anything itself. It's merely observing. It's the same with highlighting. It feels like you're engaging with the text and marking what's important, but in reality, you're just coloring the page. A week later, you'll remember there were yellow stripes, not what was underneath them. Rereading is another trap. The second or third time you read the same paragraph, you already recognize it, and a false sense of, I know this, arises once again. As for copying out notes word for word, that is essentially a mechanical manual task in which the brain barely participates. So, what actually works? First, active recall. You close the book or your notes and try to retell what you've remembered in your own words, either out loud or on paper. It's uncomfortable and harder than simply rereading, but that is precisely why it works. Your brain retrieves the information rather than just recognizing it, and this strengthens the neural connection significantly more. The second method is spaced repetition. Instead of reviewing everything indiscriminately every day, you revisit a topic at increasing intervals, today, then in a day, then a week later, then a month later. Each such review, performed just as the information is on the verge of being forgotten, strengthens your memory far more effectively than repeating the material 10 times in a single day. Simple flashcards are convenient for this, whether paper ones or those in an app like Anki. The third method is the Feynman technique. Explain what you've learned in simple terms, as if you were explaining it to a child. If you stumble, get confused, or can't explain it simply, it means you haven't truly grasped the topic. You've merely recognized some familiar words. It is the most honest test of understanding. The fourth point is interleaving topics. Instead of rote learning a single subject for hours on end, switch between several. This forces your brain to retrieve the necessary information anew each time, rather than simply coasting along a well-worn path, which is precisely why the material sticks better. And last but not least, sleep. While you sleep, your brain literally sorts and consolidates everything you learned during the day. If you don't get enough sleep, all your other efforts are partially undone because the consolidation simply doesn't have time to take place. So, putting it all together, here is a system that works. Read a short passage, pause, retell it out loud in your own words, write down one key idea on a card, and then revisit it a day, a week, and a month later, and get enough sleep. It sounds simple. Yet this very system makes the difference between remembering the essence of what you read 6 months later and opening your notes only to find you don't recognize a single line. Try applying at least one of these methods to the next topic you're studying, and let me know in the comments what worked best.